Kristaps Porzingis goes down with an ACL injury, and he's going to be out 8 to 12 months. And all of Knick Nation all day wondering, you've got to be kidding me. That's been the universal sentiment amongst Knicks fans across New York, across America, across the world. How does this happen? Just when you think that the Knicks are finally heading in the right direction. Just when you think you have that franchise cornerstone who you're going to build that team around, and in a span of a year and a half, you're going to be opening up the checkbooks, trying to attract top free agents with the promise that finally, the Knicks not only have the franchise cornerstone in Porzingis, but that the Knicks finally have a core. This season started off 17-14, and we were ecstatic. And not just us, fans, analysts across the NBA all shared the same sentiment, that this Knicks team is one of the most exciting teams in the league, one of the most exciting additions of the Knicks in many, many years. But again, once they started to lose some games, especially once their road schedule started to get heavier, it was understood. This team is far from a finished product, but nonetheless, they showed you excitement in the first 31 games of the season that this franchise has finally turned the corner, that your third-year franchise cornerstone, 7'3" Kristaps Porzingis, has finally adopted that label of the leader of the team. He has finally embraced being the face of the New York Knicks, a title that he was handed when Carmelo Anthony was traded shortly before the beginning of the season. And the first thing that everyone wanted to see when Melo was traded was, how does KP take to being the face of the franchise? How does he take to being the leader of a team that it's a mix of veterans, a mix of young players? They're trying to incorporate another young player in the 8th overall pick in this previous draft in Frank Ntilikina. But the idea is that no longer do you have Carmelo Anthony leading the way, setting the tone. Now it's going to be KP's team. He's now the face of the franchise. That K at the beginning of the Knicks now stands for Kristaps. And in the beginning of the season, wow. I mean, you're looking at eye-popping video game numbers. You're looking at games from Kristaps Porzingis that make you want to drive to Phil Jackson's ranch in Montana and laugh at him. Laugh at him for the mere thought of wanting to trade Porzingis with the hopes of drafting Lauri Markkanen, or to trade Porzingis at all for anyone. I still remember, a year ago or more over a year ago when Kevin Durant chose to go play with Golden State, leaving Russell Westbrook by his lonesome in OKC. And the thought was loosely put out there. Should the Knicks entertain the idea in a point guard driven league to maybe dangle Porzingis for Westbrook? And the reaction was so fiercely opposed to that. The reaction was so resolute that no, KP is our guy. We have seen KP do things that we haven't seen a basketball player do in a very long time. That he's got such a unique skill set, and that he's so young, he's so raw, that we don't want to miss out on whatever he's going to become. That in his first year, he's drawing the nickname of Unicorn from arguably one of the 2-3 best players in the league in Kevin Durant. We're excited. As Knicks fans, we're excited that finally, and maybe it was a stroke of luck. I mean, if you remember back to the 2015 draft with Porzingis, you could argue that he fell in our laps, and you wouldn't be wrong. You can argue that the Knicks fans did not want him, that Knicks fans booed his selection. I mean, think about it. The Knicks saw Karl Anthony Towns go number 1 to Minnesota, D'Angelo Russell go number 2 to Los Angeles, the Lakers, and then there was that moment of hesitation because, while it was assumed that Jahlil Okafor was going to go to the 76ers, the thought was, if the 76ers take anyone else, maybe they take Emmanuel Mudiay, maybe they take Justice Winslow, that the Knicks were going to have Jahlil Okafor sitting right there, and that's the name that we all knew from college. He starred for Duke. That was the guy we thought to ourselves, man, if we could ever get our hands on him. But of course, there was that moment of hesitation where Philadelphia was selecting him. Adam Silver, I don't know if you remember this, but the 2015 draft, and you could look it up on YouTube or whatever, when Adam Silver was reading the name of the Philadelphia draft pick. See, we know him as Jahlil Okafor, right? Jahlil. Adam Silver came out and called him Jahlil. So for a split second, I'm not sure, who else thought this, but I'm thinking to myself, like, who's this Jahlil? Oh my God, the Knicks are getting Okafor. And of course, then it was, they select Jahlil Okafor. So that was off the table. If you remember back to that draft, Knicks fans were throwing the name around. They were throwing Justice Winslow around. They were throwing Emmanuel Mudiay. Those were the two names that had either one of those been selected, I don't think you would have heard any boos. I don't think you would have heard any great level of excitement, but I don't think you were going to hear any vociferous boos, the type that you heard when Kristaps Porzingis' name was announced. Because, if you think back to the mock drafts for that class, Porzingis was kind of dangling around 7. In some drafts, he was 8. Some drafts, he wasn't even in the top 10. And for good reason. You don't know him. Nobody knew him at the time. He was sort of a mystery player. Obviously, the international scouts, the international analysts, they had an idea of who he was. But, again, you might not necessarily consider Latvia to be a basketball, factor, like a pro factory. I mean, when you think about that area of the world, you think about Lithuania being sort of the hotbed for NBA talent. But nonetheless, Knicks fans got a taste for him really quickly. And, just during the Summer League, just watching that there's a 7'3" guy blocking shots, running the floor, and, showing great dexterity, showing great athleticism, showing the kind of tools that you don't expect for a guy that's 7'3". And obviously, you fast forward to now, he has flourished into an all-star. I mean, and that's sort of where we are now, and kind of the sad part of it. If you look at it right now, what is the initial reaction, and what are we supposed to be thinking about right now? Obviously, for Knicks fans, it is devastating because, for many reasons, obviously, that's your franchise player. That's the player that we've embraced as our guy, as our future star, as our franchise cornerstone, our team savior, right? Not since Patrick Ewing have we drafted someone who we legitimately can pin our hopes on, that we can actually say, this is the guy that this team is going to build around. We haven't had that player. I mean, when's the last time we had that? Knicks acquired Carmelo Anthony, but like Anthony, like Ewing, the franchise just was not successful in surrounding them with the necessary talent. But nonetheless, with Porzingis, such a unique talent that you say to yourself, we still haven't seen the best of him, but from what we have seen, he's already been voted an all-star. If you think back to Mike Francesa's initial reactions to Porzingis, I remember his exact words that his talent is limitless, his ceiling is limitless. This is somebody who has MVP, the makeup of an MVP. Whether he will ever get there, we'll see. But he has that makeup, and he wants to be great. He wants to be a star. He's embraced New York City. He's embraced being, the biggest star in the biggest city in the world. He has attitude. He has swagger, as much as I hate that word. He has that, attitude. He said it in that post-game interview, a few weeks back, that this team played with the New York grit, played with that defensive attitude. And you think about the timing of this injury. Kristaps Porzingis was just a mere days away from going to his first All-Star game. And you think about, I'm sure he's got many more All-Star games lined up in his future. And as a Knicks fan, I hope so. But think about what goes on during All-Star weekend, and the reason I'm bringing this up. A year and a half from now, there are going to be marquee free agents that are going to be available in the summer of 2019. Notably Kawhi Leonard, notably Jimmy Butler, notably Klay Thompson. Who am I forgetting? Kyrie Irving, amongst others. This is the kind of thing where the superstars align, right? They get together for that weekend. They're all chatting it up, and the kind of conversations that take place. So, dude, what are you thinking? A year and a half, or you're going to be a free agent coming up this summer, or you're going to be a free agent in 2 years. What are you thinking? What are you thinking? What are you thinking? The kind of conversation that Kristaps Porzingis could have had at All-Star Weekend. Guys, look at what we have. We have me. I think Frank Ntilikina is going to be something. You know what? Yeah, I'm pushing for the playoffs, and I'm sure we're going to give it our all, but you know what? There's a chance that we're going to be sellers at the trade deadline. So there's a chance we're not going to win too many more games. We're probably going to get another piece. We're setting ourselves up to have a nice little core in New York. And oh, by the way, guys, hey, you're going to get to play with me. Right? For the first time in a long time, you're going to have a real reason to come to New York and not just come to New York to fleece the Knicks like other free agents do. See, that's kind of been the thing. And this is going to be a point that I'm going to bring up in a little bit. What kind of players do the Knicks need right now? But nonetheless, this would have been an opportunity, All-Star Weekend, for Porzingis to meet up with some of the game's very best, to put himself in that conversation, to have a seat at the table. And you don't know how important that is, because the Knicks haven't had that in a long time. And I know, yes, Carmelo Anthony, perennial all-star. But you saw it. The proof is in the pudding. The Stars did not want to come to New York to play with Carmelo Anthony. That was the reality. And if it wasn't, you would have had some guys come here, and not at the very end of their career like a Jason Kidd or like a Derrick Rose, or, I know you're going to hate this, but like a Joakim Noah. For the first time in a long time, you had a homegrown Knick, a guy who literally represents the organization as a young, budding star. A young, budding all-star going to the All-Star Weekend and having the Knicks jersey on in an All-Star game, and for the commentators that day on TV, radio, to be able to say Porzingis on the floor of the New York Knicks. That's big. So yeah, Porzingis is not going to get that opportunity, and it is upsetting. But to add to that layer, when you're thinking about the free agent class in a year and a half, which the Knicks are trying to set themselves up for cap-wise, players talk, and they look at situations. And when I say players, I'm talking about players that are actual impact players, the top flight free agents and the, quote, components, right? What do I mean by that? See, when LeBron and his buddies went to Miami, LeBron, Wade, and Bosh were the top flight players, right? Then you had the components. What do I mean by that? Components are, the guys who do their part because the top flight guys either need more of it or don't have it, right? So you add a guy like Ray Allen. Ray Allen is your, dead set, spot up 3-point shooter who can't miss. And he just makes life that much easier for LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. A component would be like Chris Anderson, Birdman, right? What did they not have the year before he joined the team? They didn't have that, bruising inside force, that guy who just, seemingly got his hand on every rebound. That's a component. Guys will take less to go play in that kind of a situation because they know they can win. When you think about what does a top free agent want, there are two things. And it's not market. I know that seems to be the theme, right? That they want to go to a big market. When's the last time that's actually played out? Because if that was the case, then the Knicks and the Lakers would always be in the playoffs. They would always be in the conversation. But that's not the case. Yeah, Houston's a mid-sized market. It's not New York or LA. They're a championship contender this year. Oklahoma City is not a big media market. Golden State, San Francisco, big media market. Yes, but they built that team organically through the draft. Yeah, but once you have that kind of a core with, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, you attract stud players like a Kevin Durant because that situation checks all the boxes. You have a core, a star core, a championship core, big city, and Durant makes his money. These top players, they want the situation and they want money, right? A max contract player wants a max contract or something damn near close. Obvious reasons. But they also want to go to a situation where they can win. Those are the two most important things. And yes, if somebody's, towards the end of their career, or if it's, again, a component player, they'll go to a situation and take less because they have a chance at winning. Don't let the big market thing fool you. I know there are a lot of commentators, you'll hear sources, so on and so forth, that wants to go to a big market because it's good for their brand. LeBron James is from Northern Ohio. He's played the majority of his career with the Cleveland Cavaliers. He is the best basketball player on planet Earth. Does it matter that nobody wants to go to Cleveland to play basketball, to visit, vacation, go for pleasure? No, it doesn't. Because the world is smaller now. Somebody playing, again, we're in New York, but we know Steph Curry. We know Klay Thompson. We know Draymond Green. It's not, 1990 where our only exposure to them is, that game of the week on late night TV, which is at midnight. Now, be it social media, be it YouTube, be it whatever, Steph Curry drains a three, 5 seconds later, you have that highlight available. You're seeing exactly what Steph Curry just did. How he crossed up a defender and knocked one down from 32 feet out. So that doesn't matter. The market size doesn't matter. I remember this tweet from Frank Isola, and it was hilarious. The year, I think it was 2014 or 2015, the year that New York hosted the All-Star festivities. It was a split between MSG and Barclays Center. And I remember, the narrative became, well, it's going to be a great opportunity for Melo to entertain possible free agents, right? And I remember Frank Isola, who I think is hilarious, by the way, but he had this one classic tweet. He tweets out how he's like, watch, Melo's going to be walking around Manhattan with Pau Gasol, and Melo's going to point to the Empire State Building and be like, hey, you see that building over there? That's the Empire State Building. And Pau Gasol's going to be like, wow, I'm coming to New York. I'm going to play with the Knicks. Obviously, it's an exaggeration, but that's just not how it works. Top free agents want to go where they're going to get paid and or where they can win. And where do the Knicks always fit in that conversation? The Knicks, for years, have been, home to giving out bloated contracts for players that, the term that the phrase that I like to use for this kind of a situation is where you're paying a third tier free agent either second tier money or first tier money. Obviously, Joakim Noah is the one that stands out like a sore thumb. Again, you think about, what was Phil Jackson thinking? I mean, you literally had a player who had no bidders, and instead of giving him a 1-year contract, maybe even a 2-year contract with a player option or a team option for the second year, no, you hand him a fat 4-year guaranteed contract. Then again, that's what you're hoping will not repeat itself under Scott Perry and Steve Mills. More so Scott Perry. I mean, Steve Mills has been around a couple of different regimes now, so the hope is that Scott Perry kind of has his team in the right direction, and he's going to do the right things now because, look, in the span of 24 hours, it's funny because I don't even know what Knicks fans are more upset about. The fact that, KP's out and he's going to be out for upwards of a year, or if fan favorite Willie Hernangomez, who was traded to the Charlotte Hornets, if we just let another great player just walk out the door for nothing. Because it seemed to be that, you just think about the last 24 hours. It's been such a 1-2 punch. Because last night, if you were watching the game, and oh, by the way, how just fitting is it that 20 years ago, it was against the same team that we lost Patrick Ewing to that freak injury that ended all hopes of a championship that year in 1998. Now here we are 20 years later in 2008, and we lose Kristaps Porzingis for upwards of a year. But when you saw him go down, I think a lot of Knicks fans, and when you're reading tweets and you're hoping for the best, and you're hearing reports that he's walking around on his own, and apparently he told, I think it was Ian Begley of ESPN, I think it was Ian Begley that he told that he's okay, right, that he feels okay. Now, obviously, that doesn't tell you everything, but you were encouraged. Now, I'm not sure exactly what time of the night the news broke that it was, in fact, an ACL, but I woke up 6 in the morning, and I saw the tweets, and obviously, there was no going back to sleep for me at that point. But if you listen to Sports Talk Radio today, if you were on Twitter today, the theme is universal, that it was a punch in the gut, that your star player, your franchise player, the player that you're trying to build around goes down to this kind of an accident, this kind of an injury. And I don't want to hear, well, this should concern you about Porzingis because he's oft injured, he's rail thin. I mean, look, an ACL injury is a freak injury. He stepped on Giannis's foot. Lost in this entire conversation is that seconds before that, we just saw him dunk on the Greek Freak, which could have been a seminal moment in that game. That could have been your highlight moment where, as much MVP talk as Giannis Antetokounmpo is getting, and for good reason, that our guy just went in on him and dunked on him. But no, we're not talking about that because seconds later we see Porzingis crumpled up on the ground holding his knee. And again, it was a sense of deflation. It was a demoralizing blow to the psyche of Knicks fans. And then hours later, you hear of Willie Hernangomez getting traded to Charlotte. And when it was first reported, you didn't know what the deal was, so some people kind of jumped the gun. It was like, oh, yeah, maybe this is the Kemba deal. Maybe Kemba's coming to New York. And obviously that was short-lived because then shortly later, it was reported that it was for two future second-round picks and a guy that, was eventually, what was his name? Johnny O'Bryant. That was Johnny O'Bryant III, by the way, who I don't know how many Knicks fans have ever even heard of up until that moment, but he was shortly waived, so you will not be seeing Johnny O'Brien III in a Knicks uniform. In case you were wondering what the Knicks PA announcer, how he was going to say his name. Finally, the timing of this injury. 2 days before the trade deadline. And you think to yourself that even if Porzingis was healthy, that the Knicks had to be, looking to make some moves, looking to be sellers. That you have veteran players on your team that, look, you're not there yet. As the Knicks, you're not there yet. You're still building. You're still developing. Porzingis is still developing. And not to play the everything's going to be all right card, but, maybe there is a silver lining in this for Porzingis. Maybe he does get an opportunity now to work on his body, to gain some strength, to, he can come back and tear his ACL or tear the other ACL. It can happen. I'm not saying that, him coming back stronger, heavier is going to necessarily prevent that. But, maybe he learns a couple of things. Maybe he has an opportunity to bulk up a little from the lower half of his body. Maybe he has an opportunity to pack on some muscle, be pushed around a little bit less. But, even mentally, maybe there's an opportunity for Porzingis to sit back and just watch the game, right? I mean, he's been in the league now for 2.5 years. He was kind of thrust right in. And, it was funny because when he was drafted, there was a report, and nobody has necessarily been able to verify it, but there was a report that Melo was not happy with the draft pick because to him, he felt that this was a 5-year project player and Melo wanted to win now. Why do we get a player who's going to take time to develop? And obviously we saw he made an immediate impact. Both his years up until this year, first half of the season, he was spectacular, phenomenal. And then eventually he would kind of hit a wall. And, I think the thought process was, well, look, Porzingis got to build up his conditioning. He's got to learn. He's got to eventually experience a full season grinding it out, which we hope that he would have had this season. But again, I'm trying to grasp here as far as what positives can come out of this. And one of them is maybe he has an opportunity to just sit back, reflect, and watch the game from a different perspective. Watch the game unfold. Maybe he picks up a couple of things. Maybe he just learns a couple of things. Maybe he gets to, pick the minds of some veteran players, pick the minds of his coaching staff during games, learn game situations. But, the other potential silver lining, and this is the one that obviously Knicks fans, are kind of holding on to because this is the biggest silver lining of it all. Look, the timing of this, in my opinion, will expedite the Knicks' plans on making a move at this trade deadline. And you think about who the Knicks should keep, who they should trade, now what the plan should be right now. Who's your core? Your core is KP. Your core is Frank Ntilikina. Your core is Tim Hardaway Jr. And then beyond that, you could throw in maybe a name like Damian Dotson, who, again, you're going to find out more. You're going to find out more about him now that he's going to get a lot more minutes, you would think. You want to see what you have in Trey Burke. But then you have to ask the question, a guy like Enes Kanter, is he part of your core going forward? Let's say there's a contending team out there that offers you a nice return for Enes Kanter. What do? If Enes Kanter is going to get you a first-round pick and allow you to build upon the asset base that you have, what do? That's not an easy question because, look, Enes Kanter has shown you a lot in a very short period of time. And it's not just, what he brings you on the court. The guy is a double-double machine. I mean, he's a 2020 waiting to happen. But he gives you grit. He gives your team heart. He gives your team an identity. He gives your team that guy that you can root for, that, and again, I don't want to make the comparison, but that Charles Oakley-esque figure that fans are gravitate towards. You look at what the positive is of keeping Enes Kanter, other than obviously his on-court play. That's the kind of guy that if I'm building a young team, which the Knicks have, or they're trying to build around, I want veterans in there who are always upbeat, which Kanter is, are gamers. Kanter had his mouth busted open, yet he's trying desperately to get back into that game last night against Milwaukee. The guy's showing up to the practice facility, showed up to games in a wheelchair, yet he's played. Yeah, I want that guy around my young players. Yeah, I want him to impart that kind of professionalism, that kind of, grit, that kind of a winning attitude upon my young players. So if I'm not getting a significant return, I view Enes Kanter as part of the core, as part of what you want on this team going forward once you start to build some more, once you start to acquire either through the draft or through free agency, you want him part of that mix. And he's 25. This is not a 28, 29-year-old veteran player. He's 25. And someone who has shown progressive growth over the course of his career. But you look at players like Courtney Lee, a good 3-and-D guy that teams are going to value. Competing teams are going to value a player like that who can score, who is a professional, and can play some defense, can play some perimeter defense. You look at a guy like Kyle O'Quinn. Kyle O'Quinn, again, you're talking about, yes, backup center on the Knicks and likely backup center on most competing teams, but that's the kind of energy guy that teams crave. He's the kind of guy that is going to bang. He's going to get you the rebounds. I mean, again, I don't need to sell Kyle O'Quinn. You've seen the guy play, but to teams who are, looking to gear up for a playoff run, you need a guy like that. That's the kind of guy that, gives you that 3-4 minutes of energy, gets the crowd on their feet, gets that rebound, gets that nice little pass inside or throws one down, and everybody's chanting Kyle O'Quinn, they're wearing the beard or whatever. Michael Beasley is an interesting one because Michael Beasley has shown this year, he's shown flashes of it throughout his career, but this year consistently, when he faces up to the basket, he is almost as unstoppable as, really any of the top tier scorers in the league. You're telling me there isn't a team out there, a playoff team that says to themselves, we need some more offense off the bench. That could be our guy right there. That's the kind of guy that we could get into the game, give us some instant offense. So, look, there are tradable pieces. And then you have to say to yourself, this team is going to be calling up some guys from the G League. That's why you have them down there. And to the Knicks' credit, they've actually done a good job in using the G League this year. Exhibit A, Trey Burke, Damian Dotson. If you look at some names down, in Westchester right now, Luke Cornett and Isaiah Hicks stand out, right? And I'm not saying they're going to come up here and they're going to become stars, but they're players that you want to take a look at. Luke Cornett, I think he's 7 feet tall. He's a three-point shooter. Again, the league has evolved to the point where three-point shooting has, much more of a premium in today's game. But the point is this. The Knicks right now have to stick to the plan, and the plan has to be that you're going to collect assets, that you're going to hope that, look, this team is not going to win a lot of games. Without Porzingis this year, they're 1-8. 1-8. How many more games do you think they're going to win this season without Porzingis? And if they do sell off some of their veteran pieces, this team might not win more than 5 games the rest of the season. They literally might win 3 to 5 games down the stretch. And that's going to put them right smack in the middle of that conversation for a good lottery pick. I don't know if they're going to get, in that, and all the way down to maybe the 7 or 8. But you know what? If you're hanging around 9 or 10 in that slot, you never know. And then it's up to the lottery balls. But with or without Porzingis getting hurt, this team needed another good draft. Because you don't want to build your team around third-tier free agents spending big money on them. Because that's what it's going to take to bring them to New York. Because they clearly know you're desperate and they can get whatever they want. Or use the Knicks for leverage and go to another team, which has sort of been the mode since Grant Hill and his Phoenix days. But the plan has to be to get young, to stay young, to collect assets, to stay flexible. And if a move opportunity presents itself, then you're in position for that. And I think that's, to me, is the one thing that bothers me the most about the Willy Hernangomez trade. Look, I'm not going to go nuts over it. I had a lot of time to sort of decompress. I was upset in the beginning because, again, this is someone who you viewed as part of your core at the end of last year. First team all-rookie, NBA all-rookie team. And first week of the season, all right, he's not playing much. But you know what? He'll get himself into the lineup. No. First half of the season, he's squarely on the bench. And, again, you're hearing things that, well, he's, hasn't been playing good defense. In practice, his conditioning's not the best. He's not really able to move up and down the floor like today's NBA game dictates. All that might be fine. First team All-NBA. I'm not saying he's, All-Rookie team last year. I'm not saying he's an All-NBA player yet or if ever, but you saw enough out of him last year. You saw out of him an ability to score in the post, great footwork in the post, a player that you really could develop that could be a nice complement to Porzingis in the low post. I think the thing that upsets me now more than anything, because look, once a player, and Alan Hahn brought this up on his show earlier this evening, and it was a good point, that if you as a player demand a trade, what message are you sending your teammates? And I know the trade request was more of a, hey, play me or send me somewhere where I will play. But that is a trade request. You made a demand to be traded. Whether it was half and half with wanting to play more, you made that demand. Your agents made that demand. And once you've done that, the message that you've sent is that, hey, guys, listen, I'm not all in. I'm not all in. The fact that I'm not getting the minutes that I crave, I'm not all in. And when you have that kind of a situation, then you know what? Sometimes you got to cut a man loose. Could he become a, poor man's Marc Gasol? I think he showed flashes of that, but is he going to be able to be a two-way player? We don't know. Look, the fear is that he goes to Charlotte and he becomes a great forward, and lo and behold, we're looking at the next max contract player that the Knicks either had their hands on or could have had their hands on. But reality is, he's gone. We'll see if that was a good trade. We'll see if that was a horrific first impression out of Scott Perry as far as in-season trades. But I guess my take would be, you keep a guy like Willy Hernangomez because you needed to build up his trade value. And even if your intent was to trade him, you couldn't have waited till the offseason. You couldn't have gotten a better offer than 2 future second-round picks and Johnny O'Brien III. We kind of... No, this is my final point. We kind of entice ourselves with this thought of, well, look, you don't want to invest a first-round pick and Frank Ntilikina and possibly taking back a bad contract to bring on Kemba Walker. Why? Because a first-round draft pick is obviously very valuable, especially when you look at what happened to Porzingis. That draft pick might be even more valuable now. But, look, what is a dream scenario for the Knicks right now? I'll give you one player. Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard is showing, when you say the phrases where there's smoke, there's fire, he hasn't come out and said that he wants to leave Portland, but there's smoke there. And he even tweeted out, something to the effect of, I'll be here next year, but there's smoke there. He's expressed that he's not happy being snubbed for the benefit of Lonzo Ball on the All-Star team. Damian Lillard is going to look around at that Western Conference landscape and say to himself, all right, look, you have San Antonio, you have Golden State, you have Houston, you have Oklahoma City. Where does Portland fit into that equation? You have Minnesota that's coming up and fast with the likes of Karl Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins, Jimmy Butler. Utah's no slouch. Denver's no slouch. The Western Conference is a bloodbath, man. And I know the Eastern Conference is a lot better now. Toronto's looks a lot different. Obviously Boston right now you'd have to say has looked the best, though again you never know what LeBron's going to show up in the playoffs, and how do you bet against a guy that has been to 7 straight NBA Finals now? But you look at Washington, yeah, they're winning games without John Wall, but John Wall's going to be back. And, but the point is, Damian Lillard might look at the West, and then he might look at the East, and he might say to himself, you know what? I might be happier if I go to the East, because then I can, first of all, be in a situation where people actually get to see me play. I know I brought the point about, market size not mattering. Well, Portland is tucked away in the Pacific Northwest. It does matter in that case, because you really don't see Damian Lillard play much. As far as great as he is, he really doesn't get a lot of exposure. And my point is, what if at some point during the summer you read a tweet, Damian Lillard wants out, okay? You're the Knicks. Now you have that first-round draft pick. Now you have that tucked away, so if you do make a trade, or you do make a trade offer, you have that available. Wouldn't it have been a little sweeter if you had that draft pick and potentially Willy Hernangomez to trade for a real target player, and not to just pair him off, I don't know, to teach a lesson or what? But anyway, to wrap things up, you're going to hope that Kristaps Porzingis comes back. I mean, he's 22 years old, and he's going to be taken care of by some of the best doctors in the world, in the hospital for special surgery. I mean, people come from around the world to have their surgeries there, and he benefits from being in New York City, so he's going to receive the best care. You hope that this is an opportunity for him to sort of sit back, relax, maybe get a different mental perspective on the game, work on his body to, maybe correct some of the shortcomings that he has with his 7'3", relatively thin frame. And now you hope to see something out of Frank Ntilikina. Now you hope to see some of these younger players come to the forefront. You hope that the Knicks make the right moves to continue to collect assets and put themselves in a good situation, be it in the draft, be it in upcoming free agent classes, and putting themselves in position that if a great trade opportunity presents itself, that they're there in good position.